All right, let's do a longer, more in-depth review of the AGM Clarion 50mm 640. I've put a couple nights into this thing already. In case you can't tell, it's got a little bit of blood on it. I've no intentions of trying not to get blood on it, and I have zero intentions of washing that blood off. Anyway, let's talk about the elephant in the room real quick. This guy right here, that is how you switch between base magnifications. It's as easy as that. That is the hero of the show. This is the main character right here. This little guy right here is what sets this optic apart from all the other offerings, even from competitors. Pretty dang cool. Couple other things you'll notice: battery tray is identical to that of the Rattler V2. Same quick change battery. I'm getting full night out of this battery, so I'm a huge fan of that. My former optics from other brands would average 3 to 4 hours on a set of batteries. That was wildly annoying. You'll notice here we've got an ADM mount again. I'm a huge fan of ADM and their mounts, especially this one because it is a double latch system. It has a lot of contact with the pick rail and then 2 latches. In my opinion, this is the superior latching system, so I have full confidence in this optic's ability to hold zero. I haven't dropped it, but I've banged it around quite a bit. It's done a lot of bouncing back and forth in my truck, so on and so forth. Hasn't lost zero yet, so I'm a big fan of that. And the latches may appear to be backwards. That's by design. That's to allow the battery tray to open, as well as I like the fact that I can have full access to my charging handle without the latches getting in the way.
Go.
All right, let's talk about my thoughts and my experience with the Clarion, because if you want to get the specs and the details, honestly, you can just get that from AGM directly. They have a good video on it. Go watch that if you want the specs and all the nitty-gritty details. I'm not going to go over any of that. I'm going to go over my experience with it. Before we get into that, it is industry standard now in the gun tube world to talk about relationships. My relationship with AGM is that I am an AGM Pro staff member, and so I'm part of their pro staff. That means they sent me this optic to use for free. I do have to send it back. Spoiler alert, I'm going to be really bummed when they ask for it back, because as of right now, I freaking love this thing. But anyway, let's with that out of the way, let's talk about my experience with the Clarion so far. Prior to running AGM optics and being on AGM Pro staff, I ran a handful of different scopes. Just like everybody else, I started on the budget end of things and, slowly worked my way up. In fact, my most recent scope that I sold was actually a Bearing Optics Super Yoder, which is a 50mm 640. This right here is obviously a 640 as well. It does have a cheat code that other optics don't have, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But anyway, I've ran optics from iRay, Pulsar. I have friends with all of the optics, and so I have a lot of time, getting behind optics from competitors. All that to say, if I had to choose, if I was in this price range and I had to choose an optic, now that I have experience with the Clarion, I would 100% spend my money on a Clarion instead of getting a different optic with a laser rangefinder. That is how cool I find this dual focus feature with the 2 different base magnifications. It is so cool that I am fully convinced that the capabilities that gives me outweigh the capabilities of a laser rangefinder, at least for me and how I hunt and where I hunt, and my past success rate of being able to hunt without a laser rangefinder. When I sold my Super Yoder, I was putting that money aside to buy a scope that had an LRF, and honestly, now I think I'm just going to run this. I'm going to run it as long and as hard as I can until AGM asks for it back. AGM, if you're watching this, just don't ask for this back. Let me keep it. This thing is so cool. So yeah, full transparency. if it was my money and I was looking at this and I was on the fence, do I buy this? Do I buy that? I'm telling you right now, jump the fence, buy the Clarion. You will not regret it. This thing is so cool. The clarity is second to none in this price range with these specs. Honestly, I think if you wanted to get the same level of capability and clarity, you would have to spend twice as much money. You'd have to buy a $12,000 optic to get a noticeable upgrade in clarity and performance over this dual base magnification system they've come up with. So, yeah, long story short, buy an AGM Clarion. It is really cool. I'm a huge fan of it, obviously. So if you have any questions about it, feel free to comment those questions. I'll respond. But yeah, as of right now, this is my favorite scope that I've ever hunted with, and I plan on hunting with it as much as possible until AGM asks for it back. So there's my thoughts on the AGM Clarion. You should buy one. Utah has actually entered the slow season where it's really hard to get dogs to commit to any closer than like 350, which is actually what this dog was at when we connected on it, right at about 350 yards. But we obviously got the job done. Unfortunately, though, I'm not able to show you what a coyote might look like around the 100-yard mark. So instead, here's some footage of Alex and I retrieving that dog. As you can tell, we are actually crystal clear. Right now, the scope is in black hot. If you're not used to black hot, it may not seem as clear to you. You just need to honestly toggle through the different color palettes and get used to each of them, because in my opinion, each color palette has its advantages in different environments. I have had a couple people reach out though and ask me, why I like to run black hot. It's usually based on the environment. Here's a little bunny foo-foo that I turned into fireworks. And then here's a little fox, a little past 100 yards. It's in some thick sagebrush, but as you can tell, I have no problem identifying that as a little fox. So, pretty impressive in my opinion. Here we have an entire herd of cattle. By an entire, I mean like 10. There's picture in picture. And as you can tell, I'm going to toggle between the different base magnifications. I'm also going to turn on picture in picture. I'll zoom, I'll change color palettes. I basically just sit here and show you what the scope might look like. These cattle weren't necessarily close, but as you can tell, crystal clear. Phenomenal performance out of this AGM Clarion. So go ahead, sit back, relax, and enjoy about 4 minutes of this same herd of cattle.